Cool. Jared, we're good?
Yep.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for coming and watching what's going to be a really interactive talk, a really fun talk. It's going to be super personal. I'm glad we've got a lot of SCCO 2020 folks here, so we can keep it laser focused, but this will be produced afterwards, so if you miss anything, it'll be on YouTube. Just do some short introductions. Dr. Matt Geller, went to school at SUNY, now I live in San Diego. I founded optometrystudents.com and newgradoptometry.com. So I love the online publishing world, and then co-founded CovalentCareers with Brett, who I'll introduce in a minute, which is an online job and opportunity platform for eye care. It's unique to students because you guys can find and network with employers way before you graduate, making it a lot easier to find a job when you do graduate. Next up, the wonderful Director of Optometry at CovalentCareers, Patricia Fulmer. She practices in Huntsville, Alabama at Vision America. So she's really unique on this panel because it's going to be around jobs and things like that. But she's the center director, so she does hiring, firing, all that stuff, and can take on kind of our employer type of role. And then co-founder of CovalentCareers and head of growth at CovalentCareers is Brett Kestenbaum. He's a physical therapist and really looks at the merging of lots of different healthcare fields and what can we learn in that side of things. So with that being the case, we'll definitely keep it interactive and stuff, but we'll start off with like just the general like foundation I think that you guys should keep in mind, right? Optometry is changing, of course. There's lots of different things happening, but I want you guys to know that throughout your education, you're going to become a very valuable individual, and you need to understand this value that you have, and you should really represent that. And that means when it comes time to finding that job, make sure you really stand up for yourself. Make sure that you're not afraid to negotiate salary. Make sure you're not afraid to say, I want to be within this practice long term. Make sure of all of those things, because I see really often people don't recognize their own value, and they fall short, and they end up wasting a year or two or three in a position that maybe wasn't the right fit because they didn't understand what they could really bring to the table. So don't be shy on the new modalities of clinical care you could bring to the table, things like that. On the same regard, you're not on this high horse, right? Put yourself out there. Be around on all platforms and networking events, and leave no stone unturned when it comes to finding that future career. And it's not just seeing patients. It could be sitting up here with us and doing independent contractor work and things like that. But leave no stone unturned, because innovation in optometry is going to take place from you guys, and you guys need to be the ones to kind of bring it forth. So I was talking with a few folks before, and they were like, I'm going to be graduating in 6 months, or fourth year student, and it wasn't a worry to this one individual or a few individuals I talked to just be submitting their resume to a couple of places or things like that. And I urge this person, be all over, leave no stone unturned, and that's really important. Thoughts on that? How do you guys go about finding talent at the practice? And it's a co-management, ophthalmology, optometry, co-management, like really sophisticated practice. What qualities do you guys look for outside of normal optometric theory and procedures and things like that?
Right. Yeah, so like you said, our practice is a little unique in that we're co-management based, but we're also MD-OD in a very unique way. Our MDs are not employed by our company, they contract with us. Our ODs are employed by the company. So when we're looking for talent, we're definitely looking for different things for each of those positions. Our ODs, we want to find somebody who really has those, command the center leadership skills. We need somebody that can step in, and even though they may not know every single clinical thing that comes their way at first, that part they're going to learn. The schools do a wonderful job of teaching you guys that side of things. You may not see 1 million patients while you're in school, but those fundamentals are put in there. It's the other side, the business side, the being able to kind of have the confidence in yourself to step into that role and know that you'll figure it out, and kind of believe that, even if it's not what they did last year or the year before, that you've got a good new vision for the practice. And can really hold on to that. That's what we're looking for. So when you go to interview, when you go to think about what your next step is, really think about what you bring to that practice outside of just your clinical skills. Because if you're graduating, you can practice optometry, right? If you pass your boards, if you get your license, you can practice. So that in itself, outside of a few residency things and some specialization that way, doesn't necessarily set you apart. It's all of the other things. So when you're in school,
it's like a level playing field that everyone starts at.
Right. So you've got to, figure out, especially while you're in school, what can I do to make myself shine in those other areas? Whether it's get involved in leadership in your school, whether it's doing a residency, those sort of things are what's really going to make those practices that are on a different kind of modality or level than just your kind of standard private practice take interest and really say, oh, this is somebody that I need to talk to.
100%. So those things don't necessarily need to be huge things. You don't need to be the president of this or that. It starts with really small wins and small aspects to your networking and who you're talking to. And so don't think that you need to go and move a mountain after this. You just need to start small. You want to touch on that? What do you see across the board?
There's actually, I was reading a book called Delivering Happiness. It's by the CEO of Zappos. His name is Tony Hsieh. And the biggest take-home point that I found in the entire book was when he said, if you have 1% improvement every single day of the year, 365 days, that's 36.5 times improvement by the end of the year. Exponential. Every single action that you take, like they were saying, adds up. So it's the small wins that count. It's starting early, it's doing things. And that was something a lot of people always ask, what did you wish you knew while you were in school? Matt, Patricia, they understood to start early. That was one thing that actually didn't come from me. I didn't start in school. I always had that mindset of, I'll figure it out after school. I'll figure it out when I'm done. The jobs will be there for me, sure. Not true. When you start early, things just start happening. Maybe the first time you try something new, maybe writing a blog article or studying a new topic, maybe you're not going to succeed at it right away. Maybe you write a blog article and you think that there's going to be 1,000 readers of it, or it's just going to get out there. And then you write it and nobody shows up. That's okay.
It's likely to happen.
It's likely to happen. Those things are fine, but you do it over and over and over again, and you start feeling more comfortable with whatever topic you're taking on or whatever skill you're taking on. And things just start happening. They start building. And that's important because when you're a student, it's the biggest opportunity that you have, and it's the most overlooked opportunity that you have, because all you're thinking about is like, hey, I'm in school, let's worry about the future when it comes. And the truth is, the future always comes, and it comes sooner than you think.
Yep.
So get ahead of the game, get involved in classes, learn, understand the technologies that you have for you. This is a day and age that has never been seen before. Social media, things like blogging. There's tools online that you should really learn about, and we can focus on some of that stuff here and teach you a little bit about it. But really start to do more, because all of the people around you, all of your classmates, most people, they're all going to start, they're all going to do the bare minimum. It's like Patricia and Matt said, everybody's rite of passage, or everybody's going to be on that equal playing field of, hey, I'm an optometrist when you get out of school. So there's a limited number of those perfect practices that you want to work in. So it's, how do I stand out? How do I get above and beyond the other people? Trust me when I tell you this, the other people are not doing anything. No matter how many times you see it, no matter how good an opportunity is, people aren't taking it because they're afraid. The fear is always there. The fear is real for all of us, even the people who do end up taking the opportunity. They were afraid in the beginning and they're still afraid now, but it's all about taking those steps forward. And it'll get easier and easier to deal with those things and put yourself out there and, become what you want to become.
Yeah, that's really, really well said. A couple of things I want to hit on there just to bring that home and maybe give you an action item on it. One, like all of this awesome stuff that we built was based on two things: working a little bit longer and a little bit harder than everyone, and not being afraid to fail. But knowing that in our end goal down the line, we're going to be okay and we're going to create something great, and we weren't afraid to fail, and we wanted the failure to come so we could learn faster and learn sooner. And that was to create a business. There's an amazing article by Kevin Kelly, and he's one of the leadership folks at Wired magazine. It's a tech magazine, and it's called 1,000 True Fans. And what he essentially says is, like, to create a business, you really only need literally 1,000 true fans, and that's to create a business. So scale that down to what you guys need to do just to get your career started. You don't need that much of an audience or that many wins to get to that point, and that's a good inspirational read. 1,000 True Fans is a short blog post on that.
Something I'd like to add to that, Matt kind of touched on the fact that maybe we work at, an hour later than the next guy, or maybe we, stay up at night thinking about some things that we could do, or some action items that we can take. I think sometimes as students, especially, I know I kind of looked at this, you look at those guys that we consider big guys, the ones that are doing the lecturings, the ones that are writing, the ones that are doing all the things that we kind of think, hey, that'd be really cool to do. And when we look at those, we know they work hard, but you kind of think once you've arrived, that the hard work's behind you. Now you're just kind of doing the fun stuff, right? If you really talk to those guys, though, they're still staying up at night, working their butts off to get it done and to make it set themselves apart beyond where they are. So if you ingrain that mentality now, then you're much less likely to kind of get out and find your little niche and become complacent, and instead will kind of keep finding that fire, keep finding your passion and working toward that.
So we're gonna start to dive deeper into nitty gritty and less like general stuff. I want to give you guys stuff to take home and try, but questions on that mentality. So the question was about how to get involved. Like, what did I actually do to be proactive and to get involved? It's a lot of different things, and I'll go from the smaller things to some of the bigger things first. But one, I was extremely friendly to people. Anyone who I met, it was less of like, here's my business card, let's connect. It was, let me find out one thing that like, this is an industry person typically, or someone involved on the business side, or one of my professors, but let me learn one thing that is like, what's keeping you up at night? What's troubling you in your line of work in eye care? And is there a way, because there likely is, as a new graduate, new mind, thinking smarter actually as an optometry student, that I could solve that person's problem in a small way? And so I'd ask that, and when I go to conventions like Vision Expo, or even just around the school, I try to learn what bothered these people. What was the newest news in optometry they just disagreed with or whatever, and giving my opinion to them. And so this is like 51%, 49% mentality. How do you give just a little more to everyone? So like, in a way, people are indebted to me because I've always given more. I never measure debt by any means, but I'm always giving more. I'm always giving a little bit extra. And so just that mentality of, even if it's just a comment, even if it's just a resource, or following up through email, or asking your friends questions, or getting statistical sample sizes of people's opinions through a Google survey on what they think of alternative. Like, these things are powerful. These are small wins that go a long way. And so it was that kind of networking, it was that kind of just chatting with people. And then I think it was just seizing opportunity. I was involved in like Bosch clubs and things like that, but for me, it came down to blogging. Like, the internet is ripe with content. There's like more content created in a day than there ever was since like the beginning of time now. It's insane how much content is created. And so you guys have the ability to create content in all various forms. Obviously, there's like YouTube stars out there, there's standard bloggers, but you can create content on any topic you want that you think you're passionate about. It doesn't need to be long, and you can do it very easily and start getting traction. 2 platforms to do that would be Medium. Medium's an excellent blog posting platform. You don't need to create your own blog, just write on Medium. It's like this microcosm that's going to keep you reading, and no one's writing anything involving eye care. We like just started to. Or LinkedIn now has like a blogging feature, and that's attached to your LinkedIn profile. And those are great ways to start writing. And when people come across you, which is going to be maybe a small amount, all it takes is one person to be like, whoa, you hit on a topic that no one's talking about. That's called like long tail keywords, or like long tail topics that no one's really talking about. They're nitty gritty, they're into your interests. Maybe you're a photographer and you're blending photography and optometry. Those types of things. Be niche in what you're doing, but right. And for me, I love tech, so I wrote Ended Tech, and that was optometrystudents.com. But it was always just really talking to people, giving them more than I would want to receive from them. I was never looking for much. I just wanted to give out more, and I got more because of that. And writing. And I think now it's like maybe different social media content could actually be extremely valuable. And that was special for me.
Yeah. I think Matt has a unique kind of path that he's taken, and most of us are not going to be able to do maybe some of the things in the way that he did them. But it's really awesome, I think, to kind of tune into what he's saying about making sure that he integrated something that he was interested in with eye care. He liked the tech side of it, so he took that and ran with it, and it's become what it is today. Whatever your passion is, if you can find a way, you'll hear a lot of different people say this. If you can find a way to incorporate that, whether it be photography, like he said, writing, whatever it is, talking to people, if you can incorporate that with eye care, you're going to be a lot happier in the end. It's also going to get you a lot further in the end because people can feel that. You know, when you're talking at something you really don't care about, that's conveyed, whether you mean to or not.
Yep.
If it's something you're passionate about, though, that's conveyed too, and it's really fun. You know, you want to surround yourself with people who are passionate and who are excited, and because it fuels your fire too. You know, you feed off that. Positivity feeds off positivity, just like negativity feeds off of negativity. For me, it was a little more conventional as far as what I did in school. Involvement is huge. You know, don't think for a second that not getting involved is the right way to go, because you may think, you know, I've got 18 tests and I really don't have time to go to this event, or I really don't have time to take on yet another club. Maybe don't take it on for your whole entire 4 years that you're in school, but get involved in a lot of different areas, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you enjoy until you try it.
Yep.
So if you dabble, see what you like, and then you can kind of start honing in on those experiences and those clubs and those organizations that really speak to you, then you can start to make a career out of that. And you're gonna make contacts while you do it. You'll make contacts at your school. Y'all are obviously taking the right step in being at a conference. Don't forget about that. You know, I think I did it as a student. Some conferences you wanted to go to because it's fun. You know, it's cool to hang out with everybody, not in a classroom, and get to do it still under eye care, right? I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of fun at these conferences, right? But really, don't forget what they have to offer. When you're here, try to make the most of your time. Go see people, go establish that, you know, that time with each booth, and really let them see your face. You know, a lot of times they see student, and if they're busy, sometimes they may not give you as much attention. Stay there, make them talk to you, because they're gonna remember that once you start to get, you know, further in your career, and you're gonna remember what it was about them that you liked as well. Beyond that too, go ahead and get business cards. A lot of the schools are doing that now. Thankfully, AUSA is doing that. But like when I was in school, it was kind of hit or miss. But bring them. Make sure you have them, because you never know when you're going to meet that person that may be your key to doing exactly what you want to do long term. So stay involved, get involved, find what you really love, and just run with it.
And on the business card side, get their card, and you should be the one to follow up.
Yeah.
And just have like a little Rolodex of all the business cards, obviously not a physical one, like digitally store it, but follow up with those people at least once a year and just say, hey, check it in. Like that formed the majority of relationships I had just through that. And when I found my job in San Diego, I just went through my list. I had like maybe 40 people to reach out to. Most of them were really cold connections, but one of the coldest ones came through, and that's what helped me get my position. So I made a standard email template, and everything was standard except the first line that talked about our previous relationship. Hey, it's Matt, hope all is well, I'm checking in, just wanted, you know, and so-and-so about our personal blah, 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 you know, back and forth a little bit with that. And then just, I'm looking to finally find my position. This is where I'm strong, this is where I'm weak, because this is what I don't want, this is what I do want. Do you know anyone in the area? Just CC me, I'll take care of the rest. And I promise you that any recommendation you provide for me, I won't let you down in recommending me. And I deliver that kind of like, over many years of I won't let you down, because remember, it's like the 51%. Well, this guy's always kind of came through type of thing. They had that experience, so it's a track record of he performs, right? He will do what he says, even if it's just following up or something like that. Yeah. He does what he says. She does what you would say, and so that was key. You want to touch on that, and then we can go into like resumes and stuff like that.
Definitely that last point that you hit on there about following up. Another thing that no one does.
No one does.
Nobody does it. It's so funny. You make a connection. You're like, thanks. You know, great to meet you. I'll follow up on Monday. The follow-up rate maybe 10%, maybe 5%. It's key. If you're the person that follows up, your name is going to be known. People respect that. It goes such a long way. Trust me. It's got exponential value, like more value than you can possibly think of. Just a handshake at a conference. Hey, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. Really like what you're doing. I'll follow up with you on Monday. If you follow up with them on Monday, I promise you'll be at the top of their list for whatever it is that the interaction was about. Or even if it's just a friendly follow-up like, hey, you know, I remember that conversation. It was great. Pleasure to meet you. Hope I can see you again sometime.
Right, even if it's not a, you know, I'm gonna do this, telling them face to face, it's almost kind of the thank you note mentality. If you take the time to actually put that effort in, they're gonna remember it. And you know, they did spend their time with you, and they do have other things that they could be doing, whether you're a 20-year OD or a student. they've got a lot going on. So, show them that you value their time and they're going to value yours a lot more.
So for example, like how do you actually put this into practice? Like Steven up here, future Dr. Saba, he's interested in vision therapy, sports vision type of stuff. And I'm going to just like role play this out. Vision Expo has got that side to it. There's somewhat of a binocular vision, sports vision side, and you can go up to a certain company that you maybe intend to work with or just want to learn more with, do the handshake, do the whole thing and say, and then when you follow up or during that specific handshake, you say, hey, I've got a group of SCCO 2020, like 20 friends who I'm close with, and like if you have any questions about what they're thinking about pretty much anything, just let me know and I'll get like a 20-person survey just of like a couple things you want to know. Happy to give that to you because I love what you guys are doing. I love the company or whatever. Maybe that's a practice, right? And then like you gave this person data or just like information about what your class thought about the newest political legislation. Perhaps it's contact lens deregulation and it was a contact lens company. Or on the sports vision side, it was, where is the disconnect of sports vision, or do you guys even know what that means, and is that a common understanding? Like, I'm just coming up with stuff. These people want to know that, and they don't have that information, and you can deliver that. So like, that's one tactic. You can just kind of say, yeah, I'm going to ask my class a question, and I'll get that for you. And then like, boom, like you got like an interview with the CEO, and you're probably going to leave optometry school early because you're such a champion, So let's go into like some nitty gritty stuff. Resumes. Have your digital resume just as much as you have your paper one. The paper one isn't dead. Like personally, I would still want to see it as an employer. I probably would never print it, but I look at a PDF version. I'm more inclined to maybe look at what they're talking about on social media, their LinkedIn profile. If I was hiring an optometrist or an optician, I'd be looking at their CovalentCareers profile, of course, because it's eye care specific. So when you guys are building that, it should be a lifelong development. You start small with just your title, your name, and then add to it. Revisit it once in a while to build that, because it's like you're kind of your ID card, your digital ID card. And you want that, to say the right thing about you. Now I know there's a lot of talks that go into like how to do that and things. I'd rather just take questions on the resume topic because I think it's belabored and it's pretty well understood. Questions on like formatting, what programs to use, should you make it pretty or should you just keep it Times New Roman 12? Thoughts on that? Questions on that?
Anybody?
Cool.
Is it okay if the resumes are more than a page long? Because I knew back in undergrad, because my first job, they were always, employers don't want to see it all written in page. As we kind of continue our school careers and add on more experiences, it is getting a little more difficult to put that one page. In our practice management class, we were taught to also include things like our interests or associations that you're a part of.
Yep.
Is that all? As an employer, would you be okay with seeing something?
She's the employer, so.
Yeah, definitely. These days, I think more and more the candidates that we're looking for, we don't expect for them to have a one-page resume. Now, what is good, and what I personally do myself, is I have two versions of my CV or my resume at all times. I have my full one that's on at this point a lot more than one page. And then, we've got surgeons in our practice who's literally, their full CV is 20 pages long, because they've done that much stuff. But then I also have a shortened one page, what do I really need them to know about me? That really, hits education, it hits where I've practiced, that sort of thing. So, and as a student, that might be where you'd put more of like your actual, your awards or your achievements, or just keep it nice and clean and to the point.
Yep.
And then also have your full one, because at different points in the job searching journey, they may need one or the other, but always have that one completely updated. Don't be afraid to put anything and everything that you could think could possibly be relevant or that might teach them something about you. Put it on there. Don't put, I won the junior high homecoming queen. That's probably not so relevant. But if it has to do with eye care, put it on there. Even if it's the smallest little thing, if it's a volunteer thing that you did, if it's an SVOS trip that you went on, definitely let them know those things, because it makes a big difference. And don't be afraid to stick to some of the traditional, guidelines that we used to kind of have.
So Brett, can you talk, at CovalentCareers we have, I missed it. Go for it, yeah.
How do you feel about after the job description? Are you turned off by a bulleted list of what they did, our actual duties for a job?
Yeah.
Or do you prefer just listing the job?
I definitely think having some description is absolutely needed. It's imperative to really letting me know whether or not, you did what I need you to have done to kind of have an idea of what you're stepping into. But that said, don't go crazy with it, because I can't tell you how many resumes I look at and they've got a list that's this long, and I might read the first 2 things and then I'm done, because I've got a million other things to do that day and I don't have time to read every little bullet. Now, if it's the resume has a lot of things and it's multi-page, I'm still going to flip through that and see those bolded items. But as far as the sub-descriptions in that, just keep it really succinct and to the point, and it'll bring a lot more value than making it just, on and on.
Yeah.
So our practice management class is having us build a resume as well as like a resume website.
Uh-huh.
As I'm making it, I feel kind of pretentious having like different pages about myself.
Right.
What is your view on doing something like that? Because with our generation, we're used to like LinkedIn
Yeah.
or something a little more on the professional side than a website.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us we want to be humble. We don't want to come across like we think so much of ourselves that we're going to build this awesome website about, look at me. But if you do it right and you keep it clean and it's really truly relevant, I think you can bridge that with our modern world and say, here's my business card, and I know that you have a lot of papers laying around. If you want to know about me, my resume is right here on this site. If you present it that way, it's going to be easier. I mean, it takes me 2 seconds to pull something up on my phone, but if I've got a stack of resumes on my desk this thick, then it's taking me a whole lot longer to get through those. So it's more in the presentation, but I definitely think that can be an awesome tool as long as you keep it to the point and keep it relevant, and keep your phrasing humble.
It doesn't get annoying with like different tabs about like.
Not really. I don't think so. I mean, the employer that needs to know it will look at it. The ones that don't, some aren't going to care. Some still want that old paper resume, and that's fine too. That's why Matt says have them both. I agree with that. It's a new thing. We didn't see that 5 years ago, but don't be afraid to use it. I mean, if I don't want to look at it, I'm not going to look at it. I'll look at your resume, instead.
It's interesting, when we develop those things, we know what they all look like, because we put it up our LinkedIn profile, our Covalent profile, or this website and the paper resume, and we know where we exist. But actually, like, the people who you'll be interacting with, the employers, they have no idea. Like, they don't see it the way you see it. And so having frequency or having a lot of that actually makes it's easier for them to touch base with you. And when they do connect with you, they're probably not going to have the same experience of like looking at all of these things at once. And so I think it's good to be in multiple places, because it's going to be easier to become discovered. Now with that website should be the hub of all things. It should have your LinkedIn link and link to your PDF resume and stuff like that. And so you want it to act as a hub, as a central hub, and just keep it brief. Just keep it brief overall, and then they can go and venture out into different places. So, there's an analogy in a way with software engineers and the way it works there, but I don't think it's for this talk.
There's also an interesting point on all that too, is that you want to present, depending on what your goal is, depending on what type of setting that you're applying to, you might want a different document. So a website would work really well for a private practice, because they might want to see that you understand technology and you can utilize skills, website skills for instance, for marketing. If they see like, wow, this person can put together a great website, maybe they can do that for my practice. So that would be one of those instances where multiple tabs will be great, a little bit more functionality will be great, or even talking about how you shared your website through Facebook and got 30 people to see it or 50 people to see it, or whatever it may be there as well.
Other questions on the resume topic? Yeah.
Do you actually go on to Google social media sites like Instagram
Absolutely.
and Facebook?
Absolutely. First thing, honest. First thing, read a resume, Facebook or Instagram. Facebook is probably still the first thing that we're going to, just because most people have one. Instagram and some of the other ones are starting to play a role. LinkedIn is great, and it's a good way for you to present yourself to an employer, but probably less the employer going to your LinkedIn. And I say that because a lot of times we're going to your social media to see if there's something we don't want there. Which is why, as a student, you like to have fun and you post a lot of stuff, but be careful with what you post. Keep yourself private. Make sure that there's nothing on there that you wouldn't want an employer to see. Because we're looking at it and saying, maybe this isn't the face that I want, representing our practice. and you learn a lot about the person. So there's good and bad there for sure. And some of the other ones, the Instagrams and the Twitters and all of those, are definitely being looked at more and more. So, you know, have a presence there, show what you bring to the table there. Don't be afraid to tweet IFACs or whatever you like and relate it back, make it fun. You know, those sort of things are all ways you can show a practice what you bring to the table without having to say, you know, Dr. So-and-so, I bring this to your practice. Those are ways to really tangibly show that without having to do it maybe in an interview sort of thing. But yes, absolutely, we look at social media for sure.
Yep.
Good question.
Other questions on that? Cool, so we can move on to, I mean, there's a lot of different topics in this. So now we've kind of walked through like an overall mentality of how to do this. We understand how to get yourself out there and maybe the right ways to network and stuff like that. Well, eventually you guys will graduate and it'll become time to actually start talking with practices, sitting down and interviewing. So there's like the interview skills part of things, but it's also about being real and saying, look, we're about to sign a contract and how to negotiate that contract, right? Any particular questions that we can start to like drive that? What do you guys think about when, any fears when it comes to interviewing or the right way to do it?
Do you need to have your own attorney before you get into the contract industry? Because I'm going to assume as I come out of school, my legal knowledge is very slim.
Yep.
So just like kind of the steps going. How much I need to know my end, how much I expect my employer.
Yeah. The biggest thing to look, the question was about what to do when the contracts come up, right? And should you, when you're ready to actually sit down with an employer, have an attorney ready at hand? Well, I think it behooves you to think about that early because you don't want to have to get that contract and then first start, you know, to call every attorney in the yellow pages. Yeah, right, just kidding. And sort through them. So yes, you want to start building that relationship with someone with legal knowledge early in your career as much as possible because they're actually really fascinating people who know a totally different side of business. So likely you have a friend who's graduating from law school or someone who is still a student, but that person can be your ultimate resource just to begin with where you won't have to shell out any money for it. Very rarely do I hear people going directly to, you know, a straight up attorney from Google to go over those things. It usually comes through a family friend or, you know, one of your own friends to talk about it. But the answer I'm getting to is yes, you should have someone look over that contract. But before that moment happens, will you even get a contract? We just did a talk yesterday on what happens when that employer doesn't even procure something for you to even look at, which is probably going to happen more often than not, where it's just like, hey, handshake, we're good, let's get started, which is a dangerous situation to be in. And it's understandable that the employer wouldn't want to do that, probably because they're already behind on so many other aspects of their practice. They haven't even begun to think about making a legal document surrounding employment. That contract is actually very simple, and it could start as a templated piece. But yes, you will have to eventually get into a contract state with them. What do you guys do when it comes to that?
The before the contract part or the actual contract
I guess
part?
the whole timeline.
Okay, so for us, it's a resume review, look into the person, look on their social media. Okay, we want to move forward. That's the point we're going to bring. First, we're going to call them. We're going to have a phone interview first. I weed out a lot of talent that maybe just isn't the right fit for the practice just through a phone interview. So, a lot of times people don't realize when you get that phone call of, hey, do you want to come in, that it's actually an actual interview. So make sure that you're presenting yourself professionally when you're talking. Anytime an employer or anybody related to a practice or a potential employer calls, make sure that you're putting your best foot forward all the time on the phone regardless. Have that smile in your voice when you're on that call because that's gonna translate to whether or not you get an interview after that. So then the interview process happens, of course. There's a lot of things we can talk about in that, and I won't talk too long on it, but definitely if you have questions, let us know. But interviewing is a talent, Brett can definitely talk to that and how it's, not something that a lot of us are just born with. It's something that you get really nervous about and you want to succeed. You're nervous because you care, So I'll let him kind of go into how to kind of get over that and how to train yourself on doing that before you're in that dream role and you're afraid you're going to mess it up. But once you've mastered the interview and you rock it and that we're ready to present that contract, then it's a full-on document. Our company, we keep things on hand because we do enough of it that we have kind of a templated contract, and I think any pay or practice that does a good bit of hiring probably has that. However, but the private practices that maybe it was a one doctor practice and they're finally ready to bring on their first associate,
May not have it.
probably doesn't. So, but as a student, be your own advocate. Make sure that you're getting a contract in hand and that you're looking at it closely and you're reviewing every bit of it. So, like I said, I'll let Brett kind of take the interview side of it.
And just one thing on contracts too, and kind of knowledge that's outside the scope of optometry, don't be afraid to learn. You can look things up on Google, you can get at least a little bit of a general knowledge on maybe what an employment contract's supposed to look like, or what are the pieces of it, or what are specific terms in the contract need. You don't need to be a lawyer to research those things, and there was one point that one of my mentors in school actually told me, and it was something that stuck with me like very well throughout my career, and that was I was in acute care. I worked in a hospital. And I was afraid that if I work in a hospital, I was going to lose my skills in orthopedics and outpatient, the sports stuff, the fun stuff, right? And that's what I said to him. I was like, look, like after school, if I work in the hospital and then I want to go into orthopedics later in my career, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. He's like, Brett, do you think you're just going to lose your ability to learn after you graduate school? And I thought about that really deeply, and it hit me like the thing that we're learning in school is not how to be a professional. The thing that we're learning is learning how to learn. That's one of the most important things that you have to remember throughout your career, is that you learned how to learn during school. And now you can take your life into your own hands and say, hey, these are the topics I want to learn about. This is who I want to become. This is what I want to do. On to the topic about interviewing and those type of things. Interviews are scary. Most likely nobody here has done a professional interview for an optometry job because you're not optometrists yet, obviously. Most likely you have done interviews to get into school, and likely you sat in a chair across the table from 2 or 3 or 1 person, and you were really nervous, especially the first time you did it. And then the second time you did it, you were maybe a little bit less nervous, like a fraction less nervous. And then if you did another interview a third time, you were a little less nervous and you were a little more prepared because you heard the questions that they were going to ask you. That's the process. That's the process of learning, the exact one that you've gone through. Every time that you learn a new piece of information, or if you take a new class on low vision, eyes aren't my specialty, but low vision, when you take that first test, for instance, in that class, you're becoming smarter, or you're learning more information that will get you towards the final. And then when you take the final, you've got all the information. If you took the final on the first day, would you pass? No, you don't know anything about it. You haven't incrementally grown to the point where you have all of the knowledge. It's the same thing with interviewing. Interviewing is a skill. It's just like basketball. If you're shooting free throws, you're not going to make 50% of them the first time. Maybe some of us in the audience do here, free throw experts.
She's really good at free throws? We need to get a hoop at the next Vision Expo.
Yeah, we should have one behind, just keep shooting
Wow. We're getting a hoop for Expo East.
Yep.
But it's a skill. So there's a simple process that you can take to get better at interviewing, and you don't want to go into the interview for the job that you want for your first interview without practicing. The first thing you should do is practice in front of a camera. And it might be weird, it might seem weird, watching yourself on camera might be really, really strange, but just watch yourself and you'll see all the cues. You'll see the things that the other people see, the person that's sitting across the table from you. So maybe the first time you do an interview or you look at yourself on film, your posture will be, you'll be down here and your voice will be low, and you may say a lot or something, or you may do this, or you may do that, and you'll see the things that may, you may say, okay, I can improve this. So the next time, maybe you'll sit up a little straighter, you cue it into that. Maybe you'll project a little louder. Maybe you'll stop doing this thing, something, you'll pick up on cues.
Or even the content of it.
The content of it.
May sound repetitive, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a list of questions and you'll go through the questions and it'll be strange. The next thing you want to do is, a lot of people out there, if you own a practice, you're not going to be happy with this one, but apply for jobs that you may not want. If you apply for jobs you may not want, the first thing that'll happen to you is when you're in the interview, there's no pressure there because you don't really care as much about the result. So you'll be able to feel what it's like to sit across the table from someone and not be so nervous. which is very freeing. It's a freeing feeling of feeling what it feels like to actually do that. So the next time when you do go into that interview for the job that you want, you're prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, and with all the knowledge that, that you'd want to be there with. And interviewing is incredibly important because it's that time where you get to show yourself off as an individual more than just your resume, more than just any other piece. So make sure you take it as serious as you take the final in school. Your final exam or the board exam, you train for that, you study for that for a very long time for the reason of, if I fail, I don't get to practice as an optometrist. Same thing with the interview. If you don't come out there and be your best, someone else is going to be their best in the interview and they're going to take that job that you want. Be better than that. Be better than yourself. Be better than you thought that you could be by preparing. There's another lesson that I learned. I forgot where the quote came from, but it was, everybody has the will to win, but the people who do win are the ones who have the will to prepare. Preparation is hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. So be that person to train your will to prepare to win, and you will be that person who does.
As the employer, one thing to keep in mind, every practice is a little different. And these days we've gotten into a much more relaxed, get to know everybody kind of mentality, which is great. It helps you know, is this a practice that I could be happy with long term? And as bringing someone on, is this someone that I could see being part of our family? A lot of practices, eye care in general, kind of look at ourselves as a family, right? But don't forget those little things that mom and dad taught you a long time ago. Dress the part. No business is ever going to fault you for dressing too nice or looking too prepared, but they're definitely going to notice if you come in and look like you're winging it or look like you just rolled out of bed or whatever. Make sure you still take that time to polish and present your best self, because it's the conversation may be a lot more personal, but that part of it still needs to be professional.
Yeah, I got a good interview tip as like kind of a fallback, but it's just kind of a funny story. It was my preparation for my optometry school interview into SUNY, and I was doing this kind of stuff early on, practicing in front of a camera, the whole thing, and I actually had mono at the time. So imagine how much that brings you down, but like all the preparation, nothing could get in my way at the time. There's just nothing that can stop you, and so over preparing, things may get thrown at you in that interview. You may not be sick, but hard questions and things like that, which will really beat you down. But your level is so much higher, so when you're brought to a lower level, you're still there, you're at that level still to perform. So like a good tip, interview questions tend to kind of repeat, and you can just look up like top interview questions, and it's like, when was a difficult experience in optometry school? Or what are 3 things you're good at? Or give me 3 things you're not good at. Or like, when did you help a staff member overcome a challenge, and things like that. And just prepare for them and have them down. But even more so than that, you could take a step back and remember why you're doing what you do. And I like to just call it the 3-pillar technique. Like, give yourself 3 pillars as to why you're doing what you do, or what you really bring to the table. And that may be, I'm an optometrist, because when you guys graduate, I'm an optometrist, I'm making this up, who really understands fundamental ocular disease skills. That is what you pride yourself on. Number 2 is that you pride yourself on a very, very high-end patient communication, right? And number 3 is, no matter what, you will always continue learning through several vehicles like CE, writing, things like that. So no matter what, you always pride yourself on ocular disease very high. You always pride yourself on very high communication, and you will always keep learning. And you can say there's a lot of other things that aren't as important. So where am I going with this? With these 3 pillars, no matter what question gets thrown at you, you always have that to fall back on. And it may not answer the question directly, but we never answer questions directly with what people ask us. And so if they throw something really hard at you, you can say, so say for example, it's like, what are you gonna do if we're not making enough money in the practice? You can go, well, you know what? At the end of the day, I really know that ocular disease, if we push for that no matter what will be okay, and with the right patient communication, we can always tweak the knobs to make sure that we'll regain revenue. Like, you didn't know how to answer that. What are you gonna say? I don't know, modify, like cook the books on QuickBooks or something, But no, you fell back on your pillars, and they always work because they're like fundamental things. So know yours, don't go into an interview without them. Another good interview tip is, once again, level playing field. Everyone goes in with a resume. Go in with an additional document. I call it like your hybrid business plan. I did it when I went to work at two different practices, and it was basically a short document that said, what can I do to grow this practice? Because even if it's a corporate entity, still, same thing applies. Even if it's a business opportunity that just happens to be like contracting and eye care, same thing applies. These people have a business, right? 51% again, this is the 51% mentality. They're there, they have to pay payroll, they have to keep the lights on, they've got to expand, they've got a lot to do. Like, they have to run a business, they're feeding their family off of that business, especially if it's a small practice. So what are you gonna do that's any different, right? How are you gonna make sure not only that continues, but it grows? And that's what lies within that little plan. It's just a short document. It can be 2 pages or 1 page or up to, honestly, like 10 or 15 pages. I think mine was like 18 pages, and it went through the different, it was intense. Don't go that far. And it was, what could we bring in? Which modality of care could we bring in? What would it take to bring it in terms of like, what would the costs be, right? Just generalized costs. I guessed. I don't care. They don't need to be exact, but I took a guess. What could we potentially make from it? Like, how much money could we make from it in terms of revenue? And therefore, what would be the net? And if there was a loss for a little bit, how long will we have to sustain that loss before we started to make money from that? Then I talked about how would we train staff on this, or how else would it factor in the rest of the practice? Trust me, I'm not that smart to get that like perfectly nailed right. I was just talking about it. All I did was just put it on paper. And you guys think about that stuff, just put it on paper, and like, I guarantee you'll get the job, because no one else is doing that at all. No one's doing that. They're just going with a resume and saying, I took these classes, and this is my GPA. But you're like, hey, I got a creative idea around bringing nutraceuticals in. I looked at, a certain pharmaceutical, like an omega-3. I looked at tranquilized mask. I looked at, you name it, a couple other, holistic treatments. And to market these, I'm going to go out in the community to local pharmacies, holistic pharmacies, and talk about it. There's a couple local businesses that may want to put our brochures in there. And I think we can make, an extra $20,000 a year if we hit this right in a couple years. Financial projections are always wrong, but the only people who ever come close are the people who actually try to get them right. And so just try that, and that's like a really good, knock it out of the park. And you may be face to face with an employer where you have one shot, one kill. So you better do it. You better do it right. And this goes for other professions as well, and it works. But don't be afraid to seem, like you said before about this overachiever person. If they don't see that as something positive, and they see you as being like cocky or something, that's not the right place for you to work. Anyone who's really thinking about business value will really appreciate that. But it's not about you. You're writing that plan for them.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Question. You talked about, I don't know if it was on CovalentCareers, but there's a section where you highlight your strengths and also a section where you highlight what you think you're weak at.
Yep.
So I always have conflict when it comes to picking out weaknesses that, seem honest, genuine, but at the same time don't throw yourself under the bus.
Yep.
So like an example would be, at 41 it's like, I work too hard. I don't well, I'm blanking on.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I'll try to come up with some to
so
fill it in.
come up with something, a weakness that sounds like almost you're giving yourself a compliment to.
Yeah. Any weakness that you're. So the question was, you brought up a couple things. Yes, CovalentCareers has this ability for you to rank the things you're good and bad at, but we phrase it as, what are you a beginner at and what are you a master at? So no matter what, you're never really bad at something. But I think that's it's more surfaced here in your point. He's saying you go into the interview and they say, give me 2 things you're weak at or 3 things you're weak at, which is, you're going to get that question if you're in a legit interview. And I think how I would answer that would be, I would be really honest with what I'm weak at or what I may not like that much, but you follow up each weakness with kind of a short path of how you plan to get better at it. So I can say, look, to be honest with you, let me think of something like, so in the practice I went into, my weakness was actually bringing on too much at once. So it was like trying to do too many things at once, which is a real weakness. I mean, it's actually a huge detriment to try to bring on more features or bells and whistles. That's not how you build a fundamental core good business or good practice. And so mine would be, well, I'm really weak in that I try to do way too much at once, and it ends up making the staff confused. It ends up wasting time. And so those things are really, really or I'm getting too into it, but that's a bad quality of mine. But I think what's important is that I'm thinking of it different now. Whenever I think of something I can bring in or something I can do, I try to put it through, just a more thorough thought process, and I only let myself really try to focus on one or two things at most now. So just give them a little bit of a how can you improve it type of thing, and therefore you can be really, really honest with them about what you totally suck at or what you're not good at. What are you guys weak at, and how can you frame that kind of same thing? Let's give them some examples.
Mine's very similar. I think a lot of us, type A people do, because we go 90 to nothing, right? We want to take on everything, we want to fix everything, we want to do everything all at one time, and it's impossible. We're one person. So for me, that's definitely a little bit of micromanaging. My regional vice president asked me that when he brought me on, and I told him, straight up, I said, I can be a little bit of a micromanager because I care, because I want to know that it's being done right. But I work on my trust level with the people that I'm working with. I work on knowing their strengths so that when I hand them a task, I'm more confident in them, and I'm more confident in myself choosing the right person to do those things. And therefore I can step back a little and recognize that I'm not doing maybe what I've done in the past. So like you said, phrasing it the right way.
Honest.
But being honest, because the worst thing that you can do is go into a practice, go into an interview, sell yourself as one thing and show up as another, because you're not going to be happy and they're definitely not going to be happy. And the staff isn't going to be happy either, which makes everyone's life unhappy. So
once the staff are unhappy, that's it.
Yeah, you're done. So make sure that you're being honest and that you're really just giving them the best, genuine, transparent version of yourself. And if it's supposed to be the practice you're supposed to be in, then that's going to work out well.
They'll smile.
How
what do
about
you
you, Rob?
suck at?
Well, there's one thing to avoid, and likely you're not going to be applying for the job if this is the case, though. Don't say that your weakness is whatever their core business is. So don't say I'm weak at patient care, and I think that I can improve over time.
Peds in a pediatric
or I hate peds in a pediatric practice. But you can go with other things. You can really say something like, I've had a tough time in the past communicating with the front desk staff about the chart of a patient, and that's something that I've been working on by reading a little bit about what the life of a front office staff member is like, or even I've been working on it by talking to the front office people and trying to get to know them more. That's something that is very important in a practice, understanding who your staff is and having relationships with them. But it's also something that's not going to affect the core part of the business, which is treating the patients. You can go in that direction. There's also a great book. It's called Who. It's a book about pretty much everything that has to do with hiring. And what they say to the hiring managers is that people are always going to try to dance around that question about weakness. They're going to give you answers that you can reframe. So they tell the hiring managers to keep digging deeper. If there's something that seems very, very, really surface, I don't even know what a good example is.
I just love my job too much.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. So that type of stuff, and some employers will accept that because they ask you for one and they'll accept it. But the general practice is keep digging deeper. So really do have that actual answer to the question and make sure that it's not too surface.
And then another thing that comes up, hopefully I'm reading your minds, what do you ask at the end of the interview, right? Look, your first job, you're going to be so stoked to get into this thing, man. You're like, just let me get in, pay me, and I'll deal with any consequences after. But your first job won't be your last, and maybe we can change that in a way by trying to really pick the right practice. That's one of our missions with CovalentCareers, is to at least get that right the first time. But with that being the case, what do you ask that employer? All you have to think about is this. This is your time to see if it's a really good fit for you. Don't ask them stuff around benefits or salary. That comes later. Those are little negotiation topics and stuff. You want to ask them about them. And so a stock question that I really like to ask is basically, what have you found in all of your years of wisdom or all of your years of practice? What are the core inherent qualities of someone that make them succeed in this type of role? Or what are your colleagues who are really successful in optometry? What are the core qualities that make them really good at this? Not hey, most people practice ocular disease and that's a good thing. And they're gonna go, wow, good question. And that's a brownie point for you. Does anyone say that anymore, brownie points? Okay, cool. And you're actually going to find out what makes them tick. So ask them things about like deeper emotional stuff, and you're going to see like how cold is their heart or how warm is it. And you want to be in business with someone with a warm heart and who understands that side. So probe at that and get at that. So that's a good little stock question. What do you guys have any like standard kind of like, even if it's interview practicing or questions to ask, any ones you like we could just kind of give out?
Yeah. I think anytime that you can show that you're there, you know, to take an interest in them and not just talk about yourself the whole time, you know, throw out the what would you like to see me bring to your practice? How can I help you? Where do you see your practice going in 10 years, 10 years? You know, what's the biggest challenge you face in your practice? The things that help them understand that you're looking at this as a true, you know, investment and not just a paycheck, and that you really want to know everything about it so that you can help make it the best it can be. Those things really set you apart when you're talking to an employer.
Yep.
There's also, before you ask a question, this kind of gets into like the negotiating and the getting the job parts, but there's a lot of talk about frame control, right? You want to set the frame. So you want to establish yourself as the prize pretty much. So when you're asking a question, you know, you can lead with something like, now I blank on it obviously, but you want to know, like you want them to know like you feel that something is important. So gonna completely blank on it. Anyway, we'll go in a different direction with this. Thinking about the question that you want to ask the employer also comes before you get into the interview in the research phase, which is something that I didn't touch on earlier, but you want to research the practice a little bit. So get some of those keys, understand more about the type of patients that they see or the outreach that they do in the community, and then ask them about that. You want to say something maybe like, I understand that you've done outreach at the schools before. Is that something that you would like to continue? Because it may be something that I'm interested in bringing to the practice.
Yeah, researching the employer is really key. You don't want to get stalker on them, but you can go to the local CE meetings and you can meet around and see how social they are, see the way they conduct themselves when they're not necessarily in the office. Or, you know, friend them on Facebook, or really try to understand what makes them tick. I mean, that's going to really help you to understand who you're getting into business with, who you're working with, and it's going to help you tailor your interview to be way, way, way more focused and in line. So one thing I like to talk about is like matching. This is actually a little different topic, and we got to get into the frame stuff because that's really, really important. And it is hard to think of an example. And that was actually a really good thing. So he couldn't get it out, but he didn't get phased, right? He didn't get phased by not being able to complete his point. And I think that's a skill that's going to come through practice. As a side note, like get yourself prepared for that awkward kind of moment and like plow through it and just keep going. Most people freeze up. I've been in interviews interviewing people like receptionists, they just start crying. And it's like you didn't prepare. You don't know how to like plow through that moment. It's an anxious moment. So I said 16 different things right here. Back on matching your vibe with the employer. That you can have, let's do a little example here. You could have employer A and employer B. Employer A is sophisticated, clinical, FAAO, CV is 50 things long, packed with all clinical research, and promotes his or her practice to a clinical T, wants extreme professionalism, wants accuracy. Then you have very successful practice. Then you have employee B, equal employer B, practice B, equally successful practice, very laid back, actually wears a polo and dark jeans to work, hugs every single patient, and sends out handwritten cards every year on Christmas. And when you go into that interview, you need to match, either you are who you are, perhaps you fall into one bucket or the other, and you should go after the employer who's the right vibe for you. But, you know, not everyone is an ideal match or an equal match, and so you need to go into there and match that vibe. If you go in to employer A, the sophisticated type, with your vibe of like, not forget about dress, but just like laid back, like, yeah, you know, it's cool, we run the test and we get whatever data we can and we try to get to that point. Or I hug every patient and, you know, I talk for 5 or 10 minutes before I even get the exam going, which is really good for employer B's case. Employer A they don't care what skills you have at that point. You just don't match the vibe. You're not a cultural fit. You don't see things the same in terms of that line of business. Or you can go as kind of like a match more for the employer A, very sophisticated, into the guy who's super friendly and laid back and not match that vibe. So learn about that ahead of time, match the vibe beforehand, and make sure you kind of fit in with that, and that's going to help the interview go smoother. And as the conversation happens, you mirror and match, and you begin to like understand, you know, you could be in an interview and he or she could start cursing, and you may love cursing, you know, and you just go at it. That'll be great. It sounds like a bad idea, but that may be like, oh, that may feel so good to that person to communicate on that level. That's obviously an end of the spectrum here that I'm talking about, but does that make sense? Do you guys feel like you can kind of think about that next social interaction you're in, matching that vibe? And that's an interesting thing with patient care too. You get like really socially awkward patients, and you need to like let them not feel socially awkward. Or you'll get another type of patient who is very social, and you've got to not be shy. And that goes into patient care as well.
Definitely.
And then also with practices, you want to learn about the culture in the practice, because that's what's going to keep you there. Like we've been mentioning before, a practice or your job, it's like family. You don't want to be in a practice where there is the potential for you either not to fit in, or you don't like the people, or if you hear a little bit like there's a little bit of tension between two people who are employed there. Those things actually happen, and they drive you away from it. It becomes not fun. So just think about that when you're going in there as well. Are the people at the front of the office the people that I want to be around every single day? Another thing to touch on with that too is with the interview, when you walk in the door, you want to meet the staff. You want to make a good first impression.
Bagels.
Bring bagels, bring whatever, but...
I always bring bagels on the first day. Not to the interview, actually.
No.
So on your first day of employment, yeah, that would be weird, I think. Driving everyone with bagels.
You can bring something to the interview and say, hey guys, you know, I'm here for an interview. Here's some things I brought them for you. I know you guys are always hungry. Food's always great, but you do want to make a good first impression, because whoever the hiring manager is going to ask the rest of the staff, like, hey, what'd you think about that person when they walk in?
I'm so glad you touched on that. Experienced that so many times. First thing was not what that employer interviewer cared about. What did the staff think? Oh, every time. So that's take time to meet the staff, shake the even if you're led right to the exam room, see if you could break off just for a moment. Not really like break off and just wander away, but like as you're getting led back, just shake the first person hand and see if that employer kind of like keeps distance from you and is like, well, let's go, come on, which is cool. Or if they just, oh yeah, well, let's actually introduce you around.
Yeah.
Watch the subtleties.
Yeah.
And the only way you could get good at that is by like being at Vision Expo and trying it out, and not with employer or an interview, but like just people.
Yeah, make sure you're smiling, make sure you're presenting yourself, you know, that you're happy to be there. The staff doesn't want a doctor that's going to come in every day and be miserable and, you know, not get to know them and not be a part of the team. So, like they said, reach out. You don't have to, you know, run away and go meet every single one while they're trying to get you in the interview room, but do take the time to say hello and make them feel like you care about them as well. And when you're hiring staff, your staff will let you know what they thought of that interview person, almost to a fault. You know, our girls sometimes will come out and you don't even have to ask them. The look on their face says everything.
Yeah,
you know,
just like, nope.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So staff has a lot of pull in a practice, so make sure you're treating them right.
Staff is everything, and you'll become one of the staff members, and you'll appreciate
Right.
that too. We're already like almost 20 minutes over, so I want to take questions. Like a couple other things, bring bagels or something on the first day, or coffee. It's like a surprise, everyone loves it. When it comes to just treating staff correctly, you are not their superior by any means. You are equal. It's a lateral level organizational structure until someone shows you otherwise. But be careful becoming too friendly with them too. Really, really tempting to get very close with the staff members. They become their best friend. In some ways, as the OD in the practice, from a standpoint of like leadership, yes, you are their superior and you dictate the flow. You don't want to let them dictate the flow of like the exam and things like that, or anything, but be careful. You need to maintain the power in that. And I've made that mistake, and I've heard a lot of colleagues who have made that mistake, and it's hard to repair from that after. But treat the staff nicely. You're not any better than them, to be honest with you. It really is the wrong call. If you do what's best for them, they will make your life a lot easier. And that's like probably the biggest key to success is be awesome to the staff. They'll make your life easier. Other questions, like hard pressing ones, and we can answer. Take 5 more minutes.
And we can definitely do more of these at East.
I'm just curious, we talked a lot about interviewing for your first job, right? Just kind of getting your foot in the door and starting practice after optometry school. I just want to kind of get a sense of, do you have ultimate goals of starting your own practice or not just being employed, but being partners in practice as well?
How many of you guys want to open cold or start your own practice or buy into a practice?
Good.
Hands high, I want to see.
Eventually be,
Yeah, so for like 50%
some sort of
or
a
so.
management.
See,
Right.
it's always this kind of like maybe,
Yeah.
and that's true. It's like a maybe. It's like, well, let's see the way optometry turns out, or
Right.
let's see what the financing is like. And we did another talk on opening cold earlier that'll be probably, I like to do this part, I think of myself in the YouTube frame that way, I think. And it'll probably load right up. Comment below. Yeah.
How do you know what to like request for money or just like we don't know our value?
Right.
Yeah. So we're
Benefits or
Yeah.
like our salary. Like,
really good question. Me and that gentleman over there, who's a part of the founding team at Covalent and also an attorney, we did a talk. It's going to be somewhere on this YouTube page on that topic and negotiating salary and benefits. To answer it quickly, well, a few things. One, salary. We're working on that at Covalent. Patricia's leading up a salary study that we're going to do on a fairly large sample size regionally, based on what are people getting paid and where, and what do those benefits look like, and we're going to put that out for free. So not only you guys have it, but employers kind of recalibrate to maybe where the standard is. So expect to see that probably in the next 2 months or so. It's a pretty big project.
Yes.
Yeah, on CovalentCareers that'll come out.
CovalentCareers, yeah.
Covalent is really strictly geared towards career success, while New Grad is really all things New Grad in optometry. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, right now, until we get that out, because like Mike said, it's a big project and a lot of data that we're gonna try to get y'all. Doing a lot, you can look kind of, there are some rough studies, that are out there of kind of what to expect in this region. You've got your monster kind of things out there. Don't be afraid to talk to people in the area that, it's an awkward question to walk up to somebody and be like, hey, how much you make?
Yep.
But you can phrase that better. You can establish some, good connections within whatever community you're going to or whatever region you're going to. Contact your state association, ask them those sort of questions. If you're going across country, you may not have a clue what they get paid compared to, where you are now. Most of you guys are in California. The East Coast is a totally different pay scale. The South is a totally different pay scale.
California
So-
was I got about 400 a day for about an 8-hour day or so. So that was my going rate or consensus rate at practices, and that of friends was similar.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some
Starting.
numbers that you're going to look at and just be like, that's not reasonable. And those, sometimes you can negotiate the number. Maybe you need to go negotiate part of the other contract, or maybe it's just not right for you. But definitely talk to people. And you can approach it from the fact of saying, hey, I'm about to be out of school and negotiating these, and I don't really know where to start. Do y'all have any kind of guidance about what I should be looking for or what's reasonable in this area?
And ask your
Call
local
around.
association.
Yeah,
too.
definitely ask your local associations and call around and ask about fill-in work. Ask how much people, now that may be up a little because, if I'm going on vacation and I need somebody to fill in, I'm probably going to pay them a little bit more because I really want to go on vacation, right? So just know that, but do your research and just be genuine and honest and say, I need to know, can y'all help me? Ask around at places like this.
Hop on CovalentCareers and just browse through local listings in your area, and there's an opportunity for them to list their salary as public or private.
Yeah.
And so if you do look through 50 listings and get 20% and see what that consensus is and start to just form a bell curve, or ask around. And if you know someone has that key data and you don't want to ask them directly, hey, what do you make? Just be like, oh man, those folks in New York, I heard the going salary, just make it up. It's like 120,000. It's pretty good. I think it's a little different here in California. What do you think? And they'll just start word vomiting all the salaries of everyone in the area.
Yeah.
You just went around a back door to ask that question,
Yeah.
And so try it that way.
And then one kind of last hack to get a little bit of information is, especially as students, because the hack part would be if you're not students, you can say, hey, I'm a student and I'm doing a project for school, what are local salaries like for new graduates at practices, and then people are more likely to tell you what the salary for the practice is. I wouldn't recommend doing that for practices that you may want to apply to at that exact moment, because that's kind of a little fishy, but just to get a little bit more information, you can send out some emails. People will answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to, email us, ask questions. We're here to help you guys as much as we can, and we'll definitely be doing more of these, kind of talks if y'all are interested in us doing them.
Sorry, I had to get my Instagram story in. We're always available, really accessible. The easiest way to get in touch with us is on CovalentCareers. There's a little green circle in the lower right-hand corner that's essentially like instant chat with us. And if you need help with the resume, if you have a question, whatever it might be, just be like, hey, this is my question. And we're usually pretty good in getting back to people within under an hour with like a pretty robust response. And so that's probably the fastest way. And just our method of communication with stuff like this will be through that vehicle. And really looking for your guys' feedback on how to make it better. It's really a tech company at heart, and tech companies iterate very fast and come up with new features and functions very fast, but we can't do it without your feedback, so let us know.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you
guys
guys
for
the
coming.
time.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's
That's
hot.
a wrap. It is a hot up here.
If
That
you guys
light
want to ask
starts to bake
personal
you.
questions and stuff, like salary stuff, we could
Thanks for coming, guys. Yeah.
You guys.
For us to get a photo with you guys.
Yeah,
let's do it.
absolutely.
Okay to sit
No
Yeah.
at our